Hello Megalithomaniacs, welcome back. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you've all got your colour programme. This tells you everything going on over this conference weekend. And next we've got a very, very interesting speaker who's been doing some remarkable research in the Outer Hebrides, specifically on the Callanish stone circles, a place I've visited several times, been very blown away by on the numerous occasions I've been there. She is an award-winning author, she's a healer, an artist, a medical intuitive, and she works and lectures around the world looking at the geomantic and healing properties of these sites, but also working with individuals as well. And today she's going to share her unique take on the remarkable site of Callanish in the Outer Hebrides. So please give a warm welcome to Gwendolyn Awen Jones.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, everybody. So this talk is about the amazing events that I witnessed at the main Callanish stone circle on the summer solstice of June 21st, 1986, as described in my book, Callanish, the Crown, the Stonehenge of the North, available here for signing at this conference and also through my links online at callanishthecrown.com. And this is the book here. So you'll find it at the bookstore. My thanks go to all fellow megalithomaniacs here today, especially Hugh Newman, John Martineau, and their team for bringing this event together. And of course, the original megalithomaniac, John Michel, who inspired us all and who is no doubt with us in spirit here today. I also want to thank all previous researchers of the Callanish stones, especially Gerald and Margaret Ponting, whose book, The New Light on the Stones of Callanish, was of great help for the work I did on my own book. My thanks also to all previous historians and surveyors of the site, also to Rick and Mike, my two travel companions for the 1986 journey to Callanish, and to those who helped with my book editing and production, Bella Parcell, Lisa Rome, both my proofreaders and editors, and Hazel Still and her team at J. Thompson Colour in Scotland, who did the print work for me. And finally, my thanks go to the folks at Callanish Visitor Centre, who supported my work and pre-ordered my book so I could go to print in 2018. I had planned to be here much sooner, but of course COVID got in the way. So here I am. Firstly, let me clarify something. I'm not an archaeologist, a historian, or a surveyor. I am a medical intuitive, spiritual healer, artist, photographer, and author. On the summer solstice of 1986, I witnessed a remarkable event at Callanish Stone Circle that went way beyond this physical reality. I waited a long time to finally reveal this information, as I had been guided not to speak about it until at least 30 years had passed. This was to protect the site and the work that was done there. Inner vision is the key to understanding. Einstein said the only really valuable thing is intuition, and that is how I work. While archaeologists and scientists seek to measure ancient stone circles with yardstick and sextant, I feel artists and mystics must make their understanding of these sacred places known too. For some, the idea of recording a sacred event through the eyes of the inner vision may seem too inaccurate to be valid. However, it is my belief that the inner sight of the artist and mystic was an integral part of the science used in the building and siting of sacred stone circles, and that indeed inner vision was never considered separate from science the way it is today. In recent centuries, we have lost our true inner vision in favor of scientific proof, which often misses the intricate underlying workings of reality. As we have dissected the earth in our quest for fragments of knowledge, we have forgotten the sublime unity of all things and the sacred, timeless energy that unites all things. It is time for those of us who have trained our vision to see the inner worlds to speak and share our knowledge. Though our points of reference may be different from scientists and archaeologists, we have a common bond in the search for truth. Often it is the inner vision that brings profound insights to scientific inquiry, and it is in this manner I ask you to see these photographs made with technical precision, yet with the inner eye. I ask you also to think about the possibility of a truth in my words as I describe to you my inner vision at this sacred place. Sacred dreaming, the art of sacred dreaming. Imagination is more important than knowledge, another Einstein quote. Since childhood, I have slipped in and out of interdimensional doorways, seeing visions and sensing realms that others could not perceive. It was not something I often discussed, as I had learned early on that these episodes were considered just my imagination by others and too strange to be real. Often I saw energies that confused me, but I had no one to explain to me what they meant. Over time, I came to realize that while some people are born colorblind and others have normal sight, I, on the other hand, had some ability to see frequencies beyond the normal range of vision. As a child, if I heard a note, I would perceive a color with the sound of the note. Seeing a flashing light would create a resonant sound in my mind. I often saw into the spirit realms, especially at ancient places. It was not easy having what is now termed synesthesia, where normally separate senses mingle, for example, sight with sound, and a supersensitivity to my surroundings. However, I learned to channel my sensitivity into art and photography. In my early 20s, I was drawn to the ancient sites of Mexico and was trained there by an old Mayan curandera, a healer, to use my gifts of sight and become a natural healer and work with the angelic kingdoms. To be a seer was a gift, she said, and I just needed to understand how to use it and not be afraid of what I saw. She had made it plain that no drugs or alcohol should be used, and it was important to be able to travel through the doorways of space and time and come back clean without negative energy attachments. I've always followed that advice. She also said that I must always follow my dreams and visions, as it was how I would be guided throughout my life, and that all work should be done for the highest good of all. After my time in Mexico, I returned home to England and studied ancient sacred knowledge with healers and spiritual healers, teachers throughout Britain, and I learned dowsing with the British Society of Dowsers. Over the years, using maps and dowsing, I traced the geomagnetic energy lines, known as ley lines, across my native area of the North Yorkshire Moors and beyond. I was seeking out old stone circles, standing stones, ancient churches, and places of healing. I found that most sacred sites could change the energy of the body dramatically. Here I am standing with my head in the clouds as usual at one sacred site, photographed to my good friend Peter Powell. One day, an American came to visit me at home in North Yorkshire. He said he was a crystal worker. I was not entirely sure what he meant at the time, but I took him to one of the sacred sites I had found high on the North Yorkshire moors. As he approached the place, he asked if I knew how to activate the crystal above the site. I had not even had the awareness at that time that an etheric crystal was there. However, shifting my gaze to a different frequency, it became clear to me. But it was very dim, and it had no spin. He said it could be activated with sound and showed me how it was done, with tone and focused intention. He used a simple penny whistle to set the tone and asked me to sing it. As I sang the note, with focusing my intent upon the crystal to awaken it, it took on light and began to spin. This was a minor site in the scheme of things, but a very important event for me, and an awakening to another level of seeing. After that, I began using the technique to awaken the etheric crystals at other sacred sites. There was a time when the earth was in harmony with itself. The ancient temples marked a network of light and were kept in balance by those who knew the sacred law. Then came a time when great upheavals shook the earth. Some lands rose and other lands sank beneath the waves. Many souls were lost, and then, with them, the sacred knowledge of how the temples worked was mostly lost too. Only a few survivors remained, and they migrated to other lands with their knowledge. Time after time, we have had these great upheavals, and survivors have had to begin again. Who knows how many ancient civilizations have come and gone to this earth, or when exactly the stone circles were actually built. They may be far older than most suppose, perhaps connecting even to the fabled Atlantean grid of temples now underwater. Those lands that lie hidden beneath the waves from those previous civilizations in the Atlantic and the North Sea were once what is now Britain. Excuse me. Some temples yet to be found lie deep in those waters. Maybe one day they will rise again. But one temple stands on the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland. That temple of stones is at Callanish and was referred to by the Greek historian Diodorus in 55 BC. He said, "There is also on the island a notable temple, which is spherical in shape. The moon, as viewed from this island, appears to be but a little distance from the earth. The god visits the island every 19 years. The god dances continuously the night through, from the vernal equinox until the rising of the Pleiades." This is Callanish Stone Circle number 1, and is the main Callanish site. And this is a location on Google Maps, right at the top here. And here we are a little closer. Callanish is situated on the remote Isle of Lewis, which is part of the Outer Hebrides that lie off the northwest coast of Scotland. Here is a close-up of the island that shows the Callanish location. The Isles of Lewis and Harris are actually part of the same island. It's just that Harris is more rugged with high mountains, and Lewis is lower land. There are many megalithic sites around Callanish. Callanish, number 1, is the largest stone circle and is the main site. However, there are many other small circles around, well worth visiting. The book by Gerald and Margaret Ponting, The Stones Around Callanish, is a very good guide to these smaller sites, and this map is based on their research. So here we have Callanish 1 highlighted, and this is a close-up. And this is Callanish 2. And this is Callanish 3. And Callanish 4. And unfortunately, I don't have photographs of all the others, but that's what I hope to do on my next visit. Okay, so now a brief history according to the archaeologists. Over 900 stone circles were built in Britain between approximately 3,400 BC and 1,350 BC. Callanish 1 is the most complete stone circle, and it's really, truly impressive. It's the whole area is surrounded by sea locks and cold peat moorland hills. The circle consists of 13 distinctly shaped stones, each standing from 8 to 12 feet high. Inside the circle is the central stone, towering 15 feet 9 inches in height. And here we have a better view of it. Leading from the stone circle are 5 lines of stones. 2 of the lines form a long corridor heading slightly east of true north. Seen from above, the design of Callanish 1 forms a large cross with the circle at its center. Underneath the stones of Callanish 1, there is evidence of ploughing dating back to 3000 BC. Construction of the circle was sometime between 2900 BC and 2600 BC. Pollen samples from trees and cereal crops preserved deep in the peat indicate that it was a much warmer climate when the stone circle was built. Peat began to form when the climate became cooler, between 1000 BC and 7000 BC. The peat eventually engulfed some of the stones completely. By 1857, I can get my words right, when the peat was removed from the main circle under the direction of Sir James Matheson, the peat had grown to a depth of 5 feet. Now, peat grows very, very slow, so it can take thousands of years to do 5 feet. Underneath the peat, a burial chamber, previously unrecorded, and smaller stones were found. Excavations have since shown the burial cairn, which lies inside the circle, to be of a later date than the rest of the site. The magnificent stones of the circle are of local origin and were probably brought from a quarry a mile and a half away. The granite used for the stone circle was formed over 3,000 million years ago. It is called Louisian gneiss. It has veins running throughout it of quartz, black biotite, and nodules of the dark green crystal known as hornblende. And you can see the crystals here on the picture. For thousands of years, Callanish stone circle withstood the ages of time, and because it became partly covered by deep layers of peat, it was protected from the kind of desecration that so many other stone circles in Britain were subjected to by folks not understanding the true value of the stones. Those people were perhaps fearful of the mind-altering energies at these sites, or maybe they just wanted building materials. However, what the ancient temples represent are the nodal points on the grid of light that surrounds the earth. Our ancestors knew and understood these natural energy crossing points on the Earth's grid and built the stone circles and megaliths to enhance the flow of life-giving energies around the planet. Those who misunderstood this technology thousands of years later and who sought to destroy the stone circles began to break the divine circuit of life-giving energy, causing an imbalance and a distortion in the natural flow of life. Sometimes we are called by Spirit to advance into an unknown territory for the good of all humanity. We may not think we have the skills, but deep in our souls and in our DNA is the ancient memory of thousands of lifetimes from generations past, and we can reach that knowing through deep prayer and meditation. We can ask for divine guidance, and we can pass through interdimensional doorways to access the ancient wisdom. It takes focus and intention and the desire to be of service for the highest good of all. I hope you understand this, as this is now the time for all of you to wake up to your own highest call during these times of change. On that day in 1986, it was April, I had just completed a series of intense spiritual workshops in Glastonbury. It was a sunny day with a cool breeze as I took the spiral path up to the top of the tour in silence. Small white cumulus clouds were drifting silently above me. Though I was aware of people passing by, I was in my own inner world, on a sacred journey. At the top of the tour, some people were standing at the base of St. Michael's ruin, so I continued on further to the east of the tower and found a quiet place off the main path to meditate. I was very aware of the energy fields of the tour around me, above me, and below me, as if I could see it all with a 360-degree vision. So I connected to the etheric crystal light above the tour and the smaller crystal below the tour. And I silently prayed that Archangel Michael might show me a vision of my future work. He came to me as a towering angel of light and put his wings around me and lifted my spirit out of my body high into the sky and showed me a stunning network of light radiating out across the whole of Britain. Like a cobweb with morning dew glistening at the crossing points, it was shimmering with light. As I looked, I saw there were etheric crystal forms at each node. Some were bright, some were dimmed, but some had gone dark. Each crystal was unique in form, and each had their own shape, spin, tone, and color. All were part of the divine cosmic harmony. Where the grid had gone dark, I knew damage had occurred. Some crystals had fallen. Others were off-kilter, swinging sideways, totally out of alignment. Archangel Michael pointed far into the distance, to the far north, to the west of the Scottish mainland, to the Outer Hebridean Islands. It was a place I had never visited. I had heard of Callanish Stone Circle on the Isle of Lewis, and I knew that this must be the place I was being shown. A vast ray tried to enter there, but the circle was out of balance. The sight had gone dark. Yet that great ray of light was trying to enter. Something had locked the circle's energies. The site, being the crown of Britain, in my vision, was the most important to bring back online. I wondered what could have caused it to be so shut down. Though I was well aware of ley lines connecting individual sites, I had never before seen the whole grid lit up from a high vantage point. Archangel Michael simply said, "This is your work, go fix it." He gently brought me back into my body. I was amazed at the beauty of what I had just seen and thanked Archangel Michael for his help and bowed to him in gratitude, but I was perplexed and asked, how could I possibly fix it? He gave me this intense look and said, "You can do it." And then he was gone. Well, it became clear to me that the energy pathways needed restoration for the health of the land and its people. It is well known amongst natural healers that earth energy lines that have gone dark will cause illness in people who live in proximity to those lines. So this work was needing to be done, and soon, for the health of all in Britain, as I could see that this site was a major portal. To my surprise, I would find this map over 30 years later in Hugh Newman's book, Earth Grids. And there's Callanish as one of the major portals. Although and again in my thoughts, I returned to the spiral path to begin my journey down. Though I had heard of Callanish, at the time I knew very little about it, and I had no idea how it could be repaired. While mulling this over, I seemed to pass through an interdimensional doorway. Colors became brighter, more vivid, and the air sparkled with a high charge. I was met by very tall beings of light. They had shoulder-length blonde hair and blue eyes. They welcomed me as if they had been waiting for me, and as if in answering the question I had been asking in my mind, one of them handed me 2 large rods of light, about 10 feet each in length, one into each hand. These rods had immensely powerful energy, and it seemed they were like lightning rods. As he handed me the lightning rods, this person, this being, said, "This is how you will fix it." He said it with a smile. These rods had no physical weight to them, as they were from another dimension, yet they could feel solid in my hands. I tentatively brought the 2 rod tips together, and an enormous bolt of light shot from them. I stood back and separated them quickly in awe, and he said gently, I will guide you when the time is right on how to use them. I had so many questions. A lot of information was exchanged telepathically between us, and I felt I had known them all in some very far distant time, thousands of years ago. Then it was time to leave, and I continued down the path, quite amazed at what I'd just seen. As I began to walk on, the portal in time closed. Colors no longer had the intense brightness. The air no longer shimmered with light. As I passed back into this physical dimension. Most of the sites I had worked on previously were minor in comparison to what was being asked of me now to repair the Callanish site. In the next few weeks, I began to learn how to work with the lightning rods while in Devon. I found I could work at longer distances while using them to activate crystals, and that any sites that had been long out of balance. I still used the toning and focused intention as usual, but I found that these rods amplified the energy over longer distances. The Earth is like a vast crystalline sphere with its own spin and sound, but she is not alone in this cosmos. There's a continual exchange of energies between her, the sun, the planets, and beyond. It is a vast cosmic dance of electromagnetic energy. Any disruptions to the grid lines of the Earth throw life out of balance. Each crystal in the megalithic stone circle network has a specific note, color, and vibration, and all are linked to the greater cosmic mind, the Earth Spirit. They are all part of the voice of creation. The song of the Earth is amplified through the harmonics of the crystals that spin at the crossing nodes of the energy lines of light. At certain times of the year, the power is intensified. Solstices in particular are a time to note. Some circles are aligned to work with specific planetary bodies, others to star systems. All are important. We are electromagnetic beings, and the Earth is one giant dynamo interacting constantly with us, the sun, the planets, and the cosmos. Around the Earth are natural pulsing magnetic lines of force. Those of us who have the sensitivity can see and feel those energy lines. Too many have lost this natural sensitivity because they are surrounded by man-made grids of electrical power lines, cell towers, radio and transmission towers, and, of course, now their own cell phones and 5G masts going up everywhere. Earth ley lines still exist even so, and are marked and amplified by these ancient megalithic stone circles and standing stones. Leading up to the solstice, I had a series of dreams and intuitions about the site and how to unlock its mysteries. The dream on June 6, 1986. Of whom do you speak, sang the cuckoo. We know not her words in paradise. Which woman is this that spins and dances with flames and swords of fire? She is great indeed, if this is true. What kindling does she require to set this nest afire, to relinquish this body to the flames and rise as a phoenix, replenished anew? Tell her to sing more freely. Her words are but a scent in the air, drifting, evasive. Tell her to light the fires which all will hear. Tell her to rise to her name. The dream about a cuckoo calling me to Callanish left me puzzled. What did it mean to set nest afire, and what was the significance of the cuckoo at Callanish? The next morning I was amazed to find a reference to the cuckoo mentioned in the book The New Light on the Stones at Callanish by Gerald and Margaret Ponting. The Pontings reported that some Callanish locals believed that at midsummer sunrise, the Shining One was thought to walk up the avenue of stones, heralded by a cuckoo's call. A shiver went down my spine as I read those words. June 7th, 1986, another dream. The winged serpent awaits, for sun and moon spiral together, blending rays of magic, a never-ending dance of energy, the twist of the serpent's tail, Moons count your days and suns your nights. The double helix spins and separates in perfect harmony with the dance of light. What deeper rays penetrate the cosmos than the sound of the one true voice rising deep from within the heart atom of each being in alignment with the truth? I was left wondering what any of this could mean. I just knew I was being called to be present at Callanish for some deeper purpose than I could possibly understand. On June 12, 1986, I confirmed my journey to Callanish with 2 male companions. I had been shown I needed to work with 2 or 4 male companions to clear the site, not 1 or 3, as a very specific balance was needed between the male and female energies. June 15th, another dream. The crown will shine and become a beacon. The fires from within the center of the earth are rekindling as the sun moves to its height. The dragon awakes and begins to breathe, restless from his sleep. His tail flicks as the energies dance to and fro. Catch the serpent as he flies and tame him. He will take you to the heart of the earth, and thence to the heart of the eternal void, from whence all things come and return to. The serpent and the dragon are one. On June 19th, 1986, my 2 companions and I began our travels towards Callanish. Taking the passage by ferry gave us a perspective on how ancient travelers would have approached these Western Isles. The sea was a rolling steely grey on the day we set sail from Skye, watching the white gulls skillfully flying in our wake against the early evening skies. Though we travelled by modern ferry, sense of magic and timelessness as we sailed towards the distant island. The long lingering light of midsummer lit the sky with mauve and violet as we came into the harbour at the grey stone village of Tarbert. The surrounding mountains of North Harris were covered with white fingers of low mist. Yet above us the sky was clear. Once we had disembarked with the car, we drove north through the craggy mountains of Harris, where the great sea eagles still fly, towards the dark peat moorland hills and sea lochs surrounding Callanish on the west side of the Isle of Lewis. It was late evening by the time we arrived at Callanish. The tall stones stood as silhouettes against a deep indigo blue and purple sky. There was silence. Though the small village of Callanish lay so close by, no sound disturbed the sanctity of this place. Of all the places I had seen in Britain, to me, this stone circle was the crown, still whole and undisturbed by time, having been protected by peat for centuries. I felt I had reached some ancient doorway in time. The stones, however, seemed locked by some long-forgotten magic that prevented them from speaking. To my eyes, it looked as if gnarled, twisted energy strangled each stone, as if each was held captive by some dark force. It reminded me of how dried, blackened seaweed grips stones on the seashore, tight and suffocating. I knew there was big work to be done, to release each stone before the solstice dawn. The waxing moon rose over the stones as we drove on our way to set camp. On June 20th, 1986, at 4 a.m., I left my 2 companions asleep in the tent and climbed the hill about 2 miles from Callanish in order to watch the sunrise for orientation. Then, in meditation, I was given the exact information needed to clear the dark web around the stones. I rejoined my companions, and we reviewed the sequence of work to be done. We studied and worked with Callanish 1, the main stone circle, and other smaller outlying sites, 2, 3, and 4, in the Callanish complex throughout the day. For the previous 7 years, the stones had been shrouded in mist at solstice sunrise, and we were told they only showed themselves to whom it is given may see. We could only hope that the weather would be on our side. We knew about the legend of the cuckoo heralding the arrival of the Shining One at solstice sunrise, yet while we listened attentively for the cuckoo's song all day long, expecting it to be a common sound, we heard nothing but the constant strumming wings of an acrobatic snipe as it swooped in its aerial display. We returned to the main circle of Callanish One in the evening after a full day of visits to the other megalithic sites. And I was concerned when I heard a group of people drumming loudly without any kind of synchrony and not in any alignment at all with the natural frequency of the stones. It was a racket. Awful. I knew it would just hamper the work we'd come to do, which remained silence. It required silence, focus, and pure spiritual intent. I was relieved when an old keeper of the stones stormed wildly towards them, throwing his hands up and angrily told them to leave, shouting that such noise was not in keeping with the sanctity of the place and shooed them all away. If you could have seen that, it was actually hilarious. They were running with their drums and everything clattering behind them. They were like lost children going to the distance. Silence returned as they left. The cold air smelled of the sharp tang of salt from the surrounding sea loch, mixed with the scent of damp, peaty earth. I quietly made some photographs of the almost full moon over the circle and set up my camera on a tripod aligned for sunrise. June 21st, 1986. At 2 a.m., after deep prayer and meditation to clear ourselves of any old patterns that might make the work impossible and become fully connected to Source, my companions and I worked through the night with the main Callanish site by moonlight, using pure tones, spiritual fire, and sharp focus. We broke the dark energies that had bound the site. My companion stood at each end of the row we were working on, while I worked with one stone at a time, cutting and disentangling the knotted, dark skeins of magic. We worked first with the stones that ran from the east to the west, then the line of stones from the south to the west side of the north corridor, then the stones at the east side of the north corridor back to the central circle. Time was short, and I knew we had to complete each stone before sunrise for the circle to fully, completely speak again. As the solstice dawn approached, a small number of people had begun to gather at the outer stones in silence. Some were setting up their cameras on tripods. I knew we had to pick up speed, but with great care, as we worked to clear the stones of the central circle. My focus was intense as I continued to unravel and cut the ancient magic that had locked the stones perhaps for thousands of years. My two companions circled the central circle in opposite directions to hold the sacred space as I worked. The cold breeze of the night had died down, and not a breath of wind stirred even the smallest grasses. A great stillness held us, yet a feeling of intense building energy was rising up around us. The stones stood sharply edged against the clear sky, which was now being flushed with deep pink and orange light. It seemed to my inner sight that the stones began to flicker with an etheric rose gold fire. The stones were beginning to speak, at first in a whisper, but then gradually louder, as if some long, deep drum roll began to pulse from the earth. Then, under ever-brightening skies, just before the sun's brilliant light came over the horizon, we completed the final release of the central stone and sang the last Oms to awaken the matrix. Om is the Sanskrit sound of the cosmos. In that very moment, to our joy, the cuckoo also began to sing. and continued to do so as the sun's shafting rays entered the circle. After a few minutes, the bird fell silent, and we did not hear its call again for the rest of our stay at Callanish. I remained at the stone circle for some minutes in total awe and gratitude that we had successfully completed our work. Then I quickly sprinted back to my tripod and camera to make a photograph of the sunrise while my companions went to theirs. The morning dew had put a soft haze on the lens. I took my shot and ran back to the circle, making sure I was standing out of view of the other photographers who had gathered. I faced the sun with my back against the central pillar. To my inner vision, the circle of stones became a circle of flames, and the central stone became an immense pillar of fire. The flames moved around the circle in a clockwise direction. As the intensity of the sun reached into the circle, a vortex of flames began to spiral up around the central pillar. Within the flames, I saw a beautiful winged serpent with alchemical body of white gold fire, bearing a gold sun upon its heart. It rose phoenix-like, with blazing wings, causing what felt like great rushing winds and hissing fire to spin around me at the central stone. The vortex reached high into the sky, meeting with what seemed to be a large sphere of light above the circle. Each stone in the circle was overlighted by immensely tall beings of light, who were guiding the energy of the stones to the crystal sphere above using rods of light. Powerful arcs of light went between each of the stones of the circle and the sphere above. The sphere above looked like a beautiful, multifaceted crystal and was much larger in circumference than the stone circle below. As it became more highly charged, it glowed with the light of 1,000 suns, and it too began to spin slowly clockwise. As it radiated light and energy across the land, I heard a wonderful deep sound within my being, as if all creation sang. The feeling was indescribable, one of cosmic alignment with the source, pure joy and elation. Though there were several people at the site, most were focused on getting the sunrise onto film. No one else seemed to see what I was seeing, not even my two companions. Though they had felt changes in the energy around us and shifts within themselves, they had no inner vision to see what I told them I was witnessing. However, a short while later, a stranger to our group, a young woman, spoke independently to one of my companions and told him that she too had seen the vision of the phoenix-like figure rising from the circle of flames at sunrise. My companion was amazed to hear that confirmation. All morning long, the brilliance from the crystal shone out across the Isle of Lewis, re-energizing the land. Then, at around 3 p.m., when the sun was at its height, the energy of the circle seemed to reach a peak, and powerful shafts of light shot out with great sound from the glowing crystal in all directions. Like so many golden arrows flying out across the land, I saw sacred sites throughout Britain light up like beacons in response. Later that day, I made a sketch of the stones in pen and ink and tried to depict the solar crystalline sphere above, but I found it too complex to draw. The faceted structure was too difficult. Depicting energies from the interdimensional worlds beyond normal physical sight is difficult because there are no hard and fast edges to define them. The sheer brilliance of the crystal made it very hard to look at directly. I could not tell if the facets were 5 or 6-sided or something else, but I wanted to make a record as I knew I would not be able to photograph this aspect of what was happening at Callanish. Years later, I enhanced the original sketch in Photoshop to depict the glow of the solar sphere. That evening, just after sunset, I watched from inside the circle as the full moon rose at 11:20 p.m. over the mound of Knock and Tursa to the south. The stones began to resonate again, But this time it was the moon activating them, and a definite etheric blue flame hovered around each stone. I wished I could have captured that luminescence on film, but as it was, I struggled to capture the moment on my 25 ASA Kodachrome film due to limited light, which meant for a very shallow depth of field. After a few shots, I climbed the mound of Knock and Turser to watch the events from a higher vantage point, and I stood alone. A beautiful silver vortex of light began to spin anti-clockwise around the stones. So it's totally different than the sun. The same tall interdimensional beings that had worked at sunrise were now standing with each stone of the main circle again. Their radiance was now of a shimmering blue, and they guided the vortex of lunar light downwards. This vortex charged up a large blue energy sphere deep in the circle below. The tall being who had spoken to me at Glastonbury now stood behind me, and I was guided to sing a note to the solar sphere to reactivate it. He then guided my hands with the lightning rods to link the solar and the lunar sphere below, aligning the two through the central stone. I sang another note to the lunar sphere while focusing the energy through the rods, and its two slowly began to spin in an anti-clockwise direction. The solar sphere above, meanwhile, maintained its own clockwise spin. The lunar sphere had its own unique sound, quite different to the solar sphere, but exquisitely beautiful. In the long twilight hours, I watched an amazing dance of light between the solar and the lunar energy fields conducted through the harness of the central stone of the circle. As they intertwined, I saw they created the double helix form of the DNA. I watched in awe as this massive toroidal field was generated through and around the circle. Whoever built this circle knew exactly what they were creating, the basic structures of life. The massive circuitry of the Callanish one-stone circle and the outlying rows seemed to be linked by the various crystals in the stones in such a way to draw the Earth's lines of force into divine harmony with the solar and lunar spheres. The stones must have been specifically chosen for their ability to conduct Earth, solar, lunar, and cosmic energies to vitalize the land. My body felt powerfully charged and energized. I felt more alive than ever. My mind and inner vision seemed crystal clear, and I was seeing beyond the physical stones as if I had passed through the doorway in time. I felt no need for sleep. It was almost impossible to describe the exquisite beauty of the solar and lunar spheres as they turned in opposite directions to create the DNA double helix. Years later, I attempted to create an image of the toroidal fields, but this schematic cannot truly show the beauty of what I saw. As the moon rose higher over the stones and shimmered across the loch, I returned to the camp and watched the night through. As my companions slept, I stayed alone in deep silence and prayer, and I watched as the phoenix took form again in the flames of the campfire. My mind reached out through time. Ancient memories were stirred by the flickering dance of fire across the glowing embers. I knew I had been here a long, long time ago. June 22nd, 1986. My companions continued to sleep as the first traces of light touched the early morning sky. Though I was tired, I wanted to make photographs to record the stones in the short time we had before we had to leave. At 3:30 a.m., I returned to the stone circle to make photographs of the dawn and sunrise. A small group of people had also returned, but left shortly after the sun had risen at 4:21 a.m. At 7 a.m., after being awake for so many hours, I finally felt a need for sleep and returned to camp. I woke again at noon, my face on fire with the sun. My companions were just waking also. We returned to the stones together and sat with the circle to meditate and sang Oms again to reconnect to the central stone. The crystal above expanded through our hearts and through its thousands of facets sent light around the globe, connecting with all the great etheric crystals centered at sacred sites around the earth. The two spirals of energy from the crystals above and below merged with the sphere around the circles of stones into one great sphere of light around us. The three spheres became one. A beautiful light surrounded each one of us. We hugged each other together and smiled. None of it had been easy. We'd each faced personal challenges along the way and had to face our inner shadows in one way or another. I was so grateful that we were able to complete the work. A few days later, I was in London for a workshop with Keith Critchlow, the great researcher into the ancient stones and author of Time Stands Still. I told him of what I saw, the great toroidal field and the DNA double helix. He looked at me and simply smiled and said, "Of course." He knew it all along. 30 years later, on the summer solstice of 2016, I returned to Callanish to complete the portraits of the stones I needed to finish for my book. I created a full compendium of the stones with maps to show their locations on the site. Back home, I began to complete the text for my book from my old diaries that I had kept hidden for all those years. Here are a few sample pages from my book. Every stone in the circle and the stone rows is mapped and described for the whole site. All of the stones have great personalities and are unique in shape to conduct the flow of energies through the site. This will help you when you do go visit, for orientation when you visit. This is a solar map to show you the positions for solstice and equinox for sunrise and sunset, and how to view them from the circle using specific stones to line up for good viewing. In this map, using the true north-south line as my key, along with the actual drawn stone positions, I have composited Somerville's site map of 1909 with important solar positions found in the Ponting's book. While studying this overlay, I noticed that the large flat-edge stone number 34 indicates the general sight line for the midsummer sunrise if one is standing at the north edge of the central stone number 29. I had often wondered why the flat edge of stone 34, an obvious notched outlier stone, was not aligned with the stones of the north corridor. This plan gave me an insight as to why. Again, standing at the north edge of the central stone number 29 at midsummer sunset, it will be aligned with stone number 51. When viewed from the central stone number 29's southern edge, midwinter sunrise and sunset positions will be approximately located by stones 46 and 48. The color wheels on the plan indicate the movement of the sun for the solar extremes during the midsummer and midwinter solstices and the spring and summer solstices. I also created a lunar map, using again Somerville's original site map of 1909 and information from the Ponting's book for viewing lunar maximum and minimum. Due to the extreme northern latitude of Callanish, every 18.61 years, a remarkable event occurs during what is called the major lunar standstill, when the moon appears to walk across the horizon, gleaming and re-gleaming through notches in the horizon after it sets. The moon rises so close to due south that it is less than 2 degrees above the horizon. This last occurred in 1987 and 2006, and will next occur in 2025. The major lunar standstill marks the turning point of a repeating lunar transit across the sky in the 18.61-year cycle. The minor lunar standstill is at 9.31 years, which is the midpoint of the 18.61-year cycle. For those of you waiting for that event in 2025, from what I have been able to gather online, the dates are as follows. March 7th will be the lunar maximum. First quarter moon sets at 4:59 a.m. at 335 degrees north-northwest and rises at 9:01 a.m. at 25 degrees north-northeast. The full moon will be on the 14th of March, and it will set at 6:35 a.m. at 275 degrees west and rises at 6:57 p.m. at 91 degrees east. The lunar minimum is on March 22nd. The third quarter moon arises at 4:30 a.m. at 156 degrees south-southeast and sets at 8:18 a.m. at 204 degrees south-southwest. And maybe you can take a screenshot of that if you get back home later, watch it online. It seems that the events that I witnessed in 1986 were unusual, as it can be many, many years before summer solstice will have a full moon on the very same day. Looking ahead, this is what to expect. The summer solstice of 2023. The full moon will not intersect with summer solstice, as the moon will be full on the 4th of June, completely missing the solstice of the 21st. On the summer solstice of 2024, this may be the closest to what I witnessed for some time into the future. The summer solstice will begin on June 20th, 2024, with the sunrise at 4:50 a.m. and the sunset at 9:57 p.m. The waxing moon should be rising that night at 10:07 p.m., just 10 minutes later. And after skimming the horizon, will be setting at 2:44 a.m. It will not be a completely full moon, which is full on the 22nd, but you should get some good shots, as the moon will have added color from the sunset. The next year's summer solstice of 2025 will be on June 21st, sunrise 4:21 a.m., sunset at 10:36 p.m. The moon will be full 10 days earlier on June 11th, so it will miss the solstice. It'll probably be around, but it will miss the solstice as a full moon. There will only be a crescent moon on the 21st, rising at 1:39 a.m. and setting at 5:53 p.m. On summer solstice 2026 will be, June 21st. Sunrise will be at 4:21 a.m., sunset at 10:53 p.m. Moonrise will rise at 12 a.m., just over an hour after sunset. On solstice 2026, if you're planning to go there, it will be on June 21st. Sunrise will be 4:21 a.m. Sunset will be 10:53 p.m. The waning moon will rise at 12:03 a.m., just at over an hour after sunset, and set at 6:20 a.m. This will be 2 days after the full moon on the 19th of June, but you'll still have some really good photo opportunities, assuming the weather cooperates with you. I have something else to share with you before I close to whet your appetite. While looking at Google Maps, I could see the obvious rift that had occurred between this landmass here and this landmass here, and this one is broken again in two. I believe this is Atland. And not only that it was previously joined completely, because I did an animation, I tried to put it on here, but for some reason it wouldn't take. But I did an animation where I actually moved these parts together. You could actually see what happened. So this area broke away in some catastrophe, but it also broke a second time. And in the ancient texts of Oera Linda, they talk about two landmasses, one going down and then another one going down. So this may be the ancient part of Atland. And I wanted to show you this. Off here, there are several islands. This one is 130 something miles from Callanish. But let's look at it closer. 136.98 miles. Look at what's on there. Look at that. I don't know if you see what I see, but I think this is a sister site to Callanish. I really do. If we can get a submersible, somebody, we could go down. This is just so close, and all the other mounds, these are all underwater, but at one time they were all above water with that other landmass. This is the ancient knowledge right here, hidden under the water. So I hope somebody will get inspired to find a submersible. I'll leave that to your imagination. And thank you for being here.